Dominus. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you.
So great to see you too. It really is.
So Susan Dominus is the author of The Family Dynamic, a journey into the mystery of sibling success, which I'm really interested. I am one of four sisters, so I came at this book with all sorts of questions and all sorts of preconceptions. And what I learned from you interviewing many, many families with lots of siblings is that the sibling effect of children seems to be more intense than actually the parenting. What was the impetus for this book?
Well, first, I want to start by saying that first of all, thanks for having me here, and I'm so glad you're interested. I would start by saying that what I tend to, the case that I tend to make is that parenting effects are overestimated in kind of, common wisdom and in how we think of ourselves as parents. And I do think that sibling effects are underappreciated.
Yes.
And I'm curious to hear about your own sibling dynamics, but I would say that I think I got interested in this subject very early on because I went to summer camp with a bunch of cousins whose parents were among one of the most sort of successful sibling cohorts that we know of, which is Wendy Wasserstein, the playwright, was an aunt to these young women. Bruce Wasserstein, this famous financier, was an uncle to these young women, and the mother of two of the sisters. Was at the time very impressive to us. We all thought she was somehow involved in the formation of MTV, but this is really, we're talking like the late 70s.
Right.
And, to be a woman, trailblazing woman in marketing or whatever it was she was doing, even that was exciting to me. I think as a young woman, there weren't that many playwrights even at that point. So that, so these people seemed like innovators to me and exciting to me. And I didn't exactly know who Bruce Wasserstein was, but I was curious to know what was going on in the grandparents' generation. Like, what was the home environment that was creating people who were so accomplished and bold and creative in fields where, people had not gone before, basically.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I mean, the Sisters Rosenzweig, Wendy Wasserstein's play was really influential to me because, again, being one of four sisters, I'd never seen that portrayed before. But let's not talk about Wendy Wasserstein right now. I want to talk about the fact that the final chapter here, my friend Diane Paulus, who I went to college with, I haven't seen her in a long time, but I was friends with her when she was doing the donkey show. And I remember running into her in Central Park or something like on the Upper West Side. And she was telling me that she was living with her parents at the time and her husband. And I thought, how wonderful for someone in a creative field to be able to not have to pay rent while they're building that creative field. And she and again, her siblings have gone on to do incredible things, but it was so great reading about Diane in here because I knew some of it, but not all of it. And it's a beautifully told story. Also, Lauren Groff, who I've only met once, but really liked when I met her, because our books, The Monsters of Templeton came out when which one of my books? The Red Book came out. I think though I can't even remember which books came out at the same time. Maybe it was between here and April, but whatever. Lauren and I were at a one of these author lunches together, and I remember thinking, this woman's going to go far. She was incredibly smart and just incredibly there was something to her, and you knew that she was going to do incredibly well. So, how did you find? Let's talk about those two families because there's so many families in here. But how did you meet the Groff family? How did you decide to choose the Groff family? And again, the same with the Paulus family.
I'll start with the Groff family. So I think one thing that speaks to why I wrote this book is that when I get obsessed with somebody, I always want to know what created that person. And if I read a biography of somebody famous, I really only want to know about the childhood that formed that person. I never want to keep reading about the like, and then they formed this, organization, and then that person quit. Like, no, I just want to know what was their home life like. So that's essentially the book that I wrote. It's almost like when you only want to eat one part of the like, muffin, like the top of the muffin, and then so you just
Of course,
why not
right?
just sell the tops of the muffins, So for me, that's all I ever want to read about. And I I loved Lauren's fiction so much that I just thought, what created an artist like this? And I actually just went, oh, sorry. So I just went to Wikipedia and was reading about her and saw that her sister was an Olympic triathlete. And her brother, it turns out, is a wildly, wildly successful serial entrepreneur as well. And as soon as I knew that I wanted to speak to them. So I called Lauren up right away, and she was one of the very first interviews that I did for the book. Um,
And I
as
love that the way that you interview the family together. I get this sense of you being in their home space and of talking to the siblings. And I love that you get some riffs with the kids where they're like riffing off each other, and you can just sort of sense the younger child within the adult that you're talking to.
Oh, I'm glad you felt that way. I couldn't do that with all of the families because, for example, in the Paulus family, Janet lives in Mexico, and so it's not possible for me to. I wasn't able to get everybody together. But when I could spend time with the families, I really did love it and watching the dynamics and how they all interacted. The Paulus family, I know through my sister-in-law, Stephanie Altman, who was, I think, also maybe your class at Harvard, and she made that introduction. And I think as soon as she told me that Diane's sister was this, accomplished professional musician and that her brother had been very involved in the founding of, very innovative local television news, I was
They're fun.
excited.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I don't think that, I mean, Stephanie knows Diane, but I don't think that I don't think that she knew the family history behind the Pauluses, and I think that family history of how Diane's mother is an immigrant. She came from Japan. Her father had met her while he was serving in the war. He left her, and then somehow they were able to, get back together even after that must have been so awful for her mom. And just the sort of quiet dignity of her mother and her creativity and her incredible support for her children was very moving to me. But also reading about New York in the 70s, and the Paulus family was really committed to being part of the New York cultural life. They weren't wealthy people, but they were so committed to enjoying the arts, being part of the arts, having their kids have access to the arts. I was very inspired, and yeah.
Let me break in for a second because I made assumptions about Diane just, knowing the words New York and Brearley that were wrong. And it's interesting because Diane is um she's a very intense and brilliant but private person, and I'm really glad that she allowed you into her home. I really enjoyed learning about especially their dad and their mom and the dynamic and raising their kid in New York City. And back in the 70s, you could send a kid to Brearley if you worked really hard, sewing in your apartment various tablecloths for the wealthy of New York City. Like it was amazing to read about that period of time when the Paulus family would go to Lincoln Center and sit around the fountain and watch the parade of wealthy people going in and out of the ballet or going in and out of the opera. I just love that image of this family being like, well, we can't afford the tickets ourselves, but we're going to absorb culture any way we can. It was brilliant.
I actually love that detail just because it also speaks to, in this really symbolic way of, so Diane was in the stroller along with the transistor radio and all these other people who also couldn't afford tickets to the very first opening night of the Metropolitan Opera were circling around to hear the music. And it was like Diane was sort of at the center of attention with, and of course, then she went on to direct operas herself because it was an art form that was so beloved by her mother. And yeah, it's one of my favorites. I mean, one of the things I would say about this book is it took me a very long time to do it. And sometimes it was difficult because I was raising kids. I had a job. I also teach. And I never felt, like I always felt like I should be working harder on it. But the joy of the book was getting to know these extraordinary families. I only wrote about families who moved me personally. And it was
Right.
such a privilege to get to know them and hear their stories. And I did find them so moving. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk particularly about Diane's. I mean, I saw Pippin and I saw Hair, and Hair actually plays a really significant moment in my family life because my sister Jen, who's a choreographer, was in town um, before leaving to go to. We have an annual vacation in Delaware, in Bethany Beach, Delaware, with my family, with all of the sisters and my mom and my dad. My dad had just told us the night before that he had pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And we had made this plan. We were going to sit in Central Park and try to get tickets to Hair because it was like, you had to wait on a chair and and I said to Jen, "Oh my God, should we do this?" And she's like, "No, let's do it. It'll be an amazing way to sort of think about what's going on with dad." And we sat in the friggin' park for hours. We got the tickets, and
Amazing.
at the end of Diane Paulus's Hair, they call the entire audience on stage, and everybody's dancing to "Let the Sun Shine,"
Incredible.
and we were weeping and even getting choked up thinking about it, weeping and dancing. And it was just like the beauty of that show and my dad's death, and he died exactly 4 months later. It's just such a part of that story of our family. And it's just for me, just like this book had so many threads that I was so interested in. And just to give you an idea of my family, so
I want to,
four
yeah.
daughters, four daughters. I'm the oldest. My sister Jen is a choreographer. She just like was nominated for an award in the San Francisco Bay Area for her production of Fiddler on the Roof. My sister Julie, I have twin sisters, Julie and Laura. Um, Julie is a marketing executive, very high up in Johnson and Johnson, lives in Florida. And Laura, my sister, is an orthopedic surgeon, like
I'm going to guess they're fraternal twins, not identical twins.
identical.
Oh, that's so unusual. So unusual.
Identical twins. And she became a female orthopedic surgeon at a time in the United States when she was sexually harassed, when she was, made to feel lesser. And it is just the most macho of the medical fields. And to see her succeed and push against all those norms was, anyway. And I do wonder about the sister aspect of it because we were all very close. I mean, I'm 6 years older than the twins. So I was 12 when they were six. I was 18 and leaving college when they were 12. So we didn't have a lot of time together. But I do know that when we all do get together, that interaction and that sisterly bond is so, so strong. And I do think that we did influence each other. I mean, we all went to Harvard. We all went into different fields, but really felt some desire and need to succeed in the fields that we entered. And this book really gave me some not answers, but questions to ask myself as I think about this over the next, months or whatever I'm going to be pondering it. But I just thought it was really, really brilliant. Really, really
Means
beautiful book.
means so much to me. I mean, so of course, what I think of right away when you talk about these four sisters, obviously you were a war photographer, your sister was an orthopedic surgeon. There's this great research towards the end of the book by Anne Bruneau, who finds that, when sisters have younger brothers, that's how she conducted the experiment. But so I'm sure it probably applies for older too, but she went with younger. They are more likely to go into female dominated fields. And so, in other words, you see these families like the Wojcicki's and like your own, where it's like nothing but sisters, or like there's this group of sisters who all became, two sisters who are both like CEOs of, Fortune 500 companies. And there's something about not having a brother who, maybe the father then sort of, mentors that kid and it perpetuates gender stereotypes. We don't know the mechanism, but we do know that when sisters have a younger brother, they are more likely to go into female dominated fields. And if they don't have a younger brother, they are more likely to maybe venture into more, there's this great quote from Anne Bruneau. And I say, well, you obviously are, you had a brother. And you're obviously a scientist. And
Right.
she said, but she's a social scientist. She said, we're an economist. And she said, yes, but if I only had sisters, maybe I'd be a physicist. So anyway, I do think there's nobody else who's taking the place of that, typically male field when you only have sisters in the family. So, and this is sort of the philosophy of all women's colleges too.
Right.
It's just, it all makes it seems very intuitive, but it does seem demonstrated by your own family.
Well, I would say that my dad desperately wanted a son. And in fact, my mom had my sister and me, and she was done. And my dad convinced her to try to have one more baby. And my mom read like a Vogue or Elle magazine article about like how to have a boy and like stand on your head, eat this, whatever it was, and had twin girls.
I know a story just like that. A woman I know had three sons, and she was desperate for a daughter. They now you can spin the sperm, like they up the chances.
Do it back then, yeah.
She had three sons. She had twin boys after that, twin boys.
Yeah.
So, man, woman plans, God laughs, clearly, you
Wait,
know.
but what I was going to say about that is that my dad, when he realized he wasn't going to have a son, then my mom was done, right? Four girls, twins at the end. She was like, four girls under the age of 6 at a certain point with twin babies. We all helped. We were all feeding the babies at the same time. But he decided he was going to just treat us like so we played football. We learned to play touch football in our front yard. He took
Incredible.
us fishing. He took us golfing. Like he did with us what a father would do with sons because I guess he was sort of thinking that that's what he would get a chance to do. He was one of two boys. He only had brother growing up. So he didn't even know what it was like to have girls. So he just treated us like, well, I was going to say people. He treated us
Yeah.
like people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I told him I wanted to go into war photography, when I left college, he was both, taken aback a bit and also saying like, well, somebody's got to do it, so might as well be you.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's there, one of the things that I loved in there were these little kinds of things that stuck with me that I can't pretend that I know how to emulate because you can only be who you can be. But Marilyn Hollifield, was this amazing woman who desegregated a high school when
Yeah.
she was one of three kids.
Amazing
She's an
story.
incredible woman. I hope you get to meet her at some point. And then went on to become a real force in Miami civil rights and also the first female Black partner at a major law firm in Florida. Anyway, I remember asking her, like, weren't your parents, afraid when you were going to this high school of what you were going to be subject to? And chances are they were, but they never let on. And she just said, fear was not their thing. I just love
Yeah.
that so much. Fear was not your dad's thing either, clearly. I
Yeah.
mean, how many parents would say to their beautiful 22-year-old daughter who is going off to be a war photographer, why not you? I mean, I admire that so much. It's hard. It's hard as a parent. I'm a worrier myself.
It's really hard. I think he was incredibly relieved when I came back to New York and I was like, I'm gonna go work at ABC News now. I mean, he was just like, okay, phew. Thank you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And me too, by the way. By the end of 4 years, I'm like, this is not worth it. It's not worth risking my life all the time for
And the
this.
mental health toll that it takes on people. I mean, I've seen that close up. It's really it's hard to you probably got out just in time to lead a sane and healthy life, you know.
I did it full on from 22 to 26 and a half, 27. So yeah, yeah, it was done. All right. I don't want to take any more of your time. This was so much fun to talk about this. I really, really appreciate it. And I actually just want to tell everybody that's now watched to the end of this video, this book, you'll read it in a day. I tore through this. I tore
Oh, Deb, I'm
through it.
so
It was
glad.
so fascinating. And your writing, I mean, I'm just always been a huge admirer of your writing in general. That story that you wrote on menopause was groundbreaking for the New York Times. I was so glad that you put it out there. I'd been trying in every way possible to get that into the New York Times. I had a whole story. I mean, this actually, my Substack started because I had a New York Times article that I was writing on UTIs and on vaginal estrogen to treat
Important
UTIs.
story.
And I was
Important
working with a
story.
female editor who shall remain unnamed, and we were having a great time on that. And then the male editors above her were like, ooh, UTIs.
No.
Yeah,
It didn't run?
didn't run. Got killed. And I started this in 2021.
Wow.
Was like, I can't believe we're not going to talk about vaginas in the New York Times. Like, we have to start talking about vaginas in the New York Times.
I'm really proud, I have to say, that either before or after I wrote my menopause story, my husband edited a piece by Jessica Gross that was all about how little doctors know about vaginas. So I love my husband for many reasons, but I also love that like he's the guy behind a lot of vaginal coverage in the New York Times. Alan Burdick, props to you. Also, Rachel, I think it's Rachel Gross is the reporter who's
Rachel
terrific.
Gross is awesome. I loved her
Yes,
book
yes, she's
about
extraordinary.
vaginas. I mean, I forget what the title of it, but it was amazing. All right, I'm going to press stop. Stay on for a few moments and 1 second. Hold on. Let me press
I think.
stop recording.